So let's get to building that bridge. I'm going to select this near face to me, the larger flat face. I'm going to start a new sketch. And here I'm going to define a center rectangle up from the origin, and I'll just sketch it in roughly right there. Use the right mouse button, select, and then I'm going to come in and select the two entities. I'm holding down the control key so that way I can select more than one thing at a time. This allows me to use our quick relationship bar up here, like making things collinear. So I can make that line and that edge collinear to one another. And then I want to make this point, holding down control, selecting the origin, I want to make these exactly vertical to one another. I'll finish this off by specifying a couple of dimensions. I knew for 2016, if you have something pre-selected and you go into the dimension tool, it's going to want to apply a dimension to that. Just something to be aware of. I want to specify dimensions of 30 and 10. That's going to set my geometry that I want for my bridge. I'm going to use the extrude boss command. We're going to extrude this out, kind of drag this out of ways and try to decide about where we want that thing to be. 25 millimeters is sufficient, and we want to taper our standard taper of 3 degrees of draft. Now whenever I do that, it's going to blend this face and this face that I just created, and that's a good check to make sure that you're staying consistent, is to check and see if these things are in fact one face. So I've now got my bridge roughly established. I want to go back and I want to open up this view window. If you remember from our standard viewer, that you can see that that window's opened up so that you can get a pretty good viewing angle of what might be written on the disk. Looky there, we can even see Gary back on our disk through our optics. We'll get back to that later. So we're going to use that draft command again, and this time I'm going to open this thing up. Let's go in here and do 45 degrees using that same front plane, and now I can specify these three interfaces. Could use select other if I didn't want to rotate that around, but I like to visually take a look at that and see. And then we can apply that, making sure first that our direction arrow is going in the right direction. Now we can hit apply, and you'll see that it opens up those faces for that viewing window. So a couple of more things that we need to add on here. I'm going to go to the top view. I'm going to sketch in an arc, a circle that I'm going to use in order to cut the arc on the optic mounts. Top plane, start a sketch, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that way I can see exactly where I want to be. It's going to be a pretty large circle. I'm going to use a center line from the origin in order to define where I want this center line to be. We'll go ahead and start sketching in the circle. On a 1200 millimeter diameter circle, we'll drag this guy down, get him about right here. And then what I want to do is I want to specify a dimension from our front plane. Notice how I can select the plane from the feature manager, and I can select the circle, and I can define to the center. But what I really want to do is I want to define to the tangent, the near side tangency. So I can hold down shift and I can select the circle, and now I can specify the distance from the front plane to the near side tangency at 42 millimeters. So again, that was selecting front plane from the feature tree, holding down shift and getting the near side of that arc in order to specify what we call the min distance. A couple of escapes get me out of that dimension tool, and now we're ready to go over and do our extrude cut this time. We'll zoom out a little ways and rotate this where you can see the effect of the sketch. And what I want to do here is I want to do a through all in both directions. And so that way I'll make sure that I get it cut up and down, and I want to make sure that I only affect the near side body. Setting feature scope is not always necessary, because in that case it would have only cut one side of the part. But by setting feature scope, what you're actually doing is you improve the performance of the features, meaning the computational time that's needed in order to compute that, because it knows it only needs to affect one area and it doesn't have to consider other bodies. It's very helpful whenever you're doing assemblies as well. Always define feature scope on your features when they're applicable.